I'm Drape. Growing up in Kansas City, I had a love for nature and reading National Geographic. I graduated from the University of Kansas with degrees in film and English, and I also worked 2 seasons as a photographer for Sporting Kansas City.
It was May 15, 1901, exactly 113 years ago to date. President Theodore Roosevelt and naturalist John Muir were atop Yosemite Valley in California. Roosevelt and Muir spent 3 snowy days camping through the groves of Yosemite, admiring the giant sequoia cacti and grazing under the grizzly giant. On their last night, the 2 men pitched a campfire in Bridalveil Meadow, and Muir urged Roosevelt to preserve this wild land of Yosemite, so future generations could also experience the riveting beauty of American land. Roosevelt, in his letter to Muir after their trip, remembers the western hermit thrushes who sung beautifully in the solemn evening stillness. There was a delightful innocence and goodwill about man, he wrote. By 1906, Muir and Roosevelt had made history. Yosemite was granted federal protection and national parks were born. 10 years later, in 1916, the National Park Service was founded. Today we celebrate 100 years of the NPS. Good afternoon, my name is Drape, and today I will be discussing how there has been a lack of added value in the U.S. National Park maps in the 21st century. I was born and raised in the Midwest. Specifically, I was raised in Leawood, Kansas. Kansas is full of many natural wonders, from the Flint Hills to the Castle Rock Badlands to the tall grass prairie. I grew up constantly surrounded by nature and wildlife. Even my backyard is made up of maple trees, birds of paradise flowers, a quicksand creek, a family of deer, and a red fox. Fascinated by nature, I turned to my camera to capture this beauty. Here are a few examples of Kansas and Kansas City nature. When starting my time at SVA, I decided to combine these interests of nature and visual expression, which led me to conduct a thesis about national parks and national park design. While this topic could go many ways, my research led me to these 3 arguments. 1, maps are necessary for the preservation of national parks. 2, maps are the reason visitor experience has expanded. And 3, maps have led to a contradiction of the cultivated wild. The history of national parks starts in 1938, when the first National Park Service map was released. It was a map of Yellowstone National Park. The intent for the maps of this era was to harness the unpredictability of the parks. It was a survival tool, a way to mark warning signs of the park. It was a way to discover the timeline of volcanic eruptions and the evolution of land formation. These discoveries were, and still are, important factors that visitors of the parks should know so they can reflect a commitment to resource protection, public education, and stewardship, the 3 missions of the park system. However, maps today promote a visitor engagement with nature that has little to do with reality. My research shows that maps are manipulated through design and through map-related artifacts, like posters, games, field trips, or photographs. Today I will focus on 3 case studies to prove this manipulation. For 1, the Arches National Park Trails Illustrated Map. 2, the Arches National Park Photo Map. And 3rd, the Arches National Park Electronic Field Trip. I decided to focus on one part so the evolution will be more transparent and stronger. There are 3 grids to analyze each of these maps: the unigrid formats, the polygonal grid formats, and the hybrid formats. Let's start with the unigrid. Trails Illustrated, a cartographic company, is an example of the unigrid.
With the new travel patterns and expansions in the park system. It's known for having points that were consistent, so designers can quickly locate graphic components. In other words, these maps are clear in key features and recreational points, and the history and culture of the specific park. And because of that, they have been named the most trusted and most popular maps since 1983. I traveled to Harper's Ferry in February and met with 2 cartographers of the NPS. They are responsible for the production and distribution of the Trails Illustrated maps. They too believe the Unigrid is the most structured, disciplined, and constructed in a way that is accurate and organized. You can see from these images the rich amount of information as well as organizational design it embodies through the 12-panel tile pattern. The next is the polygonal grid, or the photo map. The difference between the polygonal grid and the Unigrid is the polygonal grid does not have consistent points or coordinates. The coordinates rotate, it's not linear like the Unigrid is. There is an organizational pattern, which is why we categorize this as a photograph. The goal of photo mapping is to identify sites with cultural significance. Photo maps interprets images of national parks to find patterns from the earth. However, in comparison to the Trails Illustrated map, the photo map has no actual person capturing the data. Therefore, visual planning, identification, and cultural symbolization is lost. According to David Quammen, scientist and writer for National Geographic, a photo map should have these following attributes on the map: geothermal features, scenery, wildlife, and emerging color in the park. As you can see from this photo map, it only has seasons, times, and films to use when working with photo map equipment. No geothermal, wildlife, or color is utilized. My third case study is the Arches National Park field trip. The field trip is essentially a virtual tour of the park. The field trip is on a hybrid grid, meaning there are no restrictions and no nodes. A node is crucial to all kinds of maps. They are the latitude and longitude coordinates. A hybrid map is also considered a commercial map. Commercial maps includes videos, mobile games, apps, and maps. The electronic field trip has all 3 of these. Here's an example of one of the games. It's called Save Your Park. You can virtually clean up the pollution of national parks. And here's what the NPS calls National Institutes. You can virtually experience Arches National Park without leaving your couch. For example, want to see the first baby bison in Arches? As the surrounding landscape is disrupted by the evolution of modern commercial mapping, the future generation will have the presentation and natural landscapes frozen in time and will never have to step foot in a park again. Marketing agencies have treated the parks as another tactic of the marketing business. They are no longer mapping discovery anymore. Thus, the meaning of the video or the mobile game has been lost. The main question I've received while researching my topic is why. Why is this important, and why should we care? National parks protect our natural heritage. They are our last chance to find the connection between all walks of life. They benefit the economic, social, cultural, and health organizations of the United States. It gives animals a safe place to live and exist. Marketing companies are taking this away from them because they are not mapping the warning signs or the endangerment and threats these face to space every day. In fact, a news report was just released yesterday that a baby bison in Yellowstone was euthanized because tourists thought it was a good idea to bring the baby bison in their car. When animals are taken away from their family, it is more than likely that when they return to them, they will be rejected, which is what happened to this baby bison. This could have been easily prevented if it had been mapped somewhere. Currently, over 1,000 species are being threatened. And another reason is due to pollution. And for some reason, marketers believe virtually cleaning up the parks is healthy. The parks are in danger. Thus, national parks are in danger. I believe maps should go back to the Unigrid formats, with large-scale detail, linear movement, and stories full of history and culture of national parks.